Hello everybody, it is Mike Levin on Saturday, January 28th, 2022. This is my first video of the new year, and it's a nice bright day, and it will be in my car like lots of my recent videos, but it won't be in the dark, and it won't be too long either. I think I'm gonna go stop at Wendy's. You'll see me pick up some food. So why the video now on an errand during the day? Well, I think the main thing is because I just got my condenser microphone at the urging of my wife, who we got one for her, and we tested it out on my laptop, and the audio quality was so much improved over the built-in microphone of my Microsoft Surface laptop that I was like, hey, if I just do take the few moments to hook up this external mic, especially on my talking head sitting at the laptop videos, the listenability, as I turn down my heater fan, the listenability will skyrocket. Maybe I'll even use it in the car, I don't know, but it was one of the nice ones. It was like $60, and it came with a it is a condenser mic, plugs into the USB, and it comes with its own pop filter, so you know you can set it up in a few different configurations, but to get rid of that, you know, pop sounds when you can get sometimes when you're talking, it has one of those, and it was just a pleasure. It was so easy to set up. And I've done this several times in the past, and a combination of the audio quality not being that much better, and the setup and the software issues always being a challenge, I've always ultimately ended up stopping using these condenser mics. And now that most of the stuff I do is like YouTube like this, and listenability is a thing. It's a tag that's often put onto these videos so that you can listen to these things. This is stupid. This person is changing the direction the line goes, and I just don't agree with it. I'm gonna put myself where I should be in line and just abide by them being in front of me. I'm not going to allow that to be turned out in that strange direction. So, yeah, don't follow the herd. Don't be a sheep. If someone makes a stupid decision, you don't have to follow in line right after them. I feel like I should almost turn the camera to show you what I'm talking about. I'm also going to get my order ready in my mind, and you'll probably hear me make the order and pay for it, but there's no pause feature on the iPhone built-in video app. So unlike on Android, where I used to be able to pause while I shot my video and come back, it's a nice feature because I don't edit. So there's a big difference between shooting, you know, these kinds of videos for YouTube on an iPhone versus an Android. If you're using the built-in video app, you just can't pause. So on that note, I'll be perhaps creating a new channel, a new YouTube channel, just as I get up to 10,000 on Mick Levin. Maybe I'll keep Mick Levin. 10,000 followers on YouTube is nothing to sneeze at. It's such a asset, right? Like people who are just starting out are like 1,000 followers, 100 followers, my first 10 followers in any social media platform. They get so gaga and coveted is such a valued thing. But you know, I've been around since all this stuff started. And you know, YouTube is just one of the tires I kick, and I keep my accounts pretty consistent over the years as one of my sort of baseline testing factors. And I have a friend who is, I guess, of British Isles descent, where the MIK of one of my identities, Mick Levin, where I drop the E in Mike so that I get the Twitter, I get the email accounts, I get the whatever I want. YouTube is an exception. I got exactly Mike Levin. If you go to youtube.com/Mike Levin, MIKE-LEVIN, it'll bring you to this channel. It's kind of enough reason to not start a new channel right there. But I will be improving the audio quality of my Linux, Python, Vim, and Git talking head videos. And let's see. Yeah, I'll be tightening up my whole identity thing. I can't let anyone feel like that they can get in behind that guy. They have to get in line just like everyone else. There's people now in line behind me, and people have to deal with the reality of where the proper back of the drive-through line is, and they wanted to do it a certain way, and then they realized, nope, that person's being an idiot. This is the correct way. What, are they cutting in? No, they're not, but they were just here before me, and I'm letting them correct themselves. So now it's a proper line again. It goes way back. It's much better than it snaking directly out into the driveway, into the parking lot and blocking everything when they've got a proper drive-through lane. So this is kind of a silly video here all over the place, but I do feel like making it, and I do have a few important things to say. Those important things are, there's a symbolic beginning here. I actually have the whole day. I rarely have a whole day. I didn't pick up my kid for this weekend. They're doing a polar bear plunge on that side and on Sunday. And because of the nearly 2-hour drive each way, sometimes one day is, quote, not worth it, but it is always worth it. It is worth it to have my kid here even for one day. If it's a Friday night pickup and a Saturday night drop off, that's, a day here, and always worth it. But we're going to give them a few days on the next weekend to make up for it. And that's always fine. Flexibility. There's got to be a flexible state, a flexible framework, a core set of flexible commands. Linux, Unix, the Ken Thompson mindset. So I have a series of sites. I have a number of different sites, everything from Linux, Python, Vim, Git.com, all the way through tardigradecircus.com. And I've got a number of different, publishing and business ideas for these different sites, and I've never acted on them. And here I am, 51 years old, halfway through my life, maybe, possibly by now. And, it's time to get to work. It's time to make it. Now, I've already made it because I've internalized these wonderful carpentry skills that are in play in order to be productive on these platforms, on this development stack. I don't even know what to call it, because Linux is an OS, Python is a language, Vim is a text editor, and Git is a distributed version control system. But each one is really so much more than just that, and then they overlap with each other, and some provide runtime environments for your code, and some are your coding environments, and together they give you a toolbox, a set of technology things that you can tap on almost any problem that comes up, web or not web, business or personal, for your career or for your just personal satisfaction, to allow your soul to sing, to have something like an instrument for which you can get into the flow. I had a discussion earlier today with my wife about me once being a keyboard dandy, a real keyboard dandy. I liked my clicky mechanical keyboards because they let you get into the zone as you type. However, the necessity to use one every time you use a laptop, if you want the advantage of a modern, lightweight, thin laptop with a low-profile keyboard, you just better get used to those low-profile keyboards. And that's one of the reasons I settled in on the Microsoft Surface laptops, not the Surfaces with those flimsy keyboards. I've had that in the past. I had one of the early Surfaces, and I only needed to own one in that whole kickstand type arrangement to know it's not for me. As a keyboard dandy, I need resistance under my fingers. So I was like, what's as good as a Microsoft Surface, but is a laptop? And it turned out it was the Microsoft Surface laptop. So that's why I'm on that now. And it's great. I've been through a bunch of them. It's only the durability and the price of repair versus buying a new one that's really an issue on these things. It's better than the portfolio model that goes around in almost that U shape and opens out into a soft L shape. I loved those for a while, but then I realized they just create too much stress. You know, the advantage of the unattachability and reversibility, you know, they're a lot like a, I don't know, a Lenovo Yoga, but it physically unattaches, allows you to turn it around and reattach it. That's the portfolio model of the Surface laptops. But now I'm just on the laptop, you know, folds so thin and svelte that it's much like having just a Surface, but it's got a nice keyboard. And that nice keyboard is on such a svelte model is one of the reasons I went with it. Other reasons is that I'll never encounter driver problems and such. And, you know, that is an issue now with Windows subsystem for Linux. Okay, anyway, I'll come back to that in a moment.
I'll be right with you.
Okay. Okay, they'll be right with me, so I'll continue until they are. Yeah. So, tooling. Tooling is very important. And tooling is my message. Tooling is one of the things that makes my heart sing. I fell in love with the Amiga computer years ago. It was my first girlfriend, right? The Amiga. And then it went away. It was a heartbreak. And I was lost. I was lost in the void, in a sea of proprietary bullshit. And I took up some of that proprietary bullshit, mostly in the form of Windows, Microsoft Windows, Active Server Page, and IIS, their cure to the LAMP platforms, Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP, Python, Perl, whatever. And so Microsoft responded, and at the same time was crushing Netscape with Internet Explorer. And, you know, how could that be a bad bandwagon to jump on? How could that not be the right star to hitch your wagon to, right? Question mark. Active data objects. It had everything you needed to build websites. Yeah, hi, I'll have a number 12 medium with Coke as my drink, please.
Number 12, medium with a Coke. Anything else?
No, that's all, please.
Go ahead and move forward.
Thank you. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, I jumped onto the active server page. You'll still see .asp files all over the internet these days, all over the web, because it was such a popular platform. But then .net came along, and then there was active server page.net, ASP.net, and then there were callbacks and view states and things I was just so sickly allergic to. And I had a mentor at this time, Gerard Bucas from Great Valley Products of the Amiga days, if you remember GVP. And, I worked for him for a few years, and he really encouraged me to go in that direction and to take up VS Code, the old one, not the new one that's all the rage on the web right now, but VS Code, the original one, like VSCode.net, and even the versions that came before it, was one of these, IntelliSense auto-completion IDEs, heavyweight, but Gerard really loved it and encouraged me to go that direction. I tried using that as the IDE to create ActiveServerPage.net, code with these code behinds and callbacks, and it was so horrible. And then I recognized everything about that in like the React platform when it came along. So I was like, fool me once, shame on me. No, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. and I won't get fooled again. So, difficult expression,
One step at a time. That's it. Just breathe.
People get on, George Bush Jr. for fumbling on that one. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, that's everything. All right, so to try and wrap up this video, because I want to start eating. I made a hunt. I looked around and I came up with Linux and Python and Vim and Git for a whole variety of reasons, and it wasn't straightforward. Even like Git, I was on HG, I was on Mercurial first to keep it all in Python. And it wasn't as much about Linux as I thought it was at first. I thought it was all about Python because the language provides the interoperable layer and stuff. But then I realized, things you write in Linux have to be things you write in Python, that your .py files or whatever, even compiled Python executables, whatever, have to be started from somewhere by something. And then there's an outer context. It's a scheduler, it's a task spawner in the first place, a respawner in case anything shuts out. And so I learned about, of course, cron jobs I knew from way back. I talk about how I learned most of the Unix that I know from the Amiga computer platform. So many things worked the same way on the Amiga platform as they do on Unix today. I was able to learn so much from that first, computer girlfriend, the Amiga, that I was able to take with me to later in life. However, not everything in Unix, and then by extension Linux, is like original, like the cron system. People hated it. And so when Apple based the Macintosh based OS X on Unix, when they switched over from their proprietary stuff, because they went through the same learnings as me. I think Steve Jobs was talking to Stephen Wolfram of Wolfram Alpha, who convinced him, hey, the only real operating system out there is Unix, being used in academia to run my Mathematica. Wouldn't it be neat if Mathematica could run on Macs? Hey, you should use Unix for the Mac. Nice trick there, Stephen. And so Jobs did. He, ported the OS 9, I guess at the time, operating system to OS 10 or the OS X, and that was the switchover from being proprietary to Unix-based for the Mac, which timing-wise was similar to when they switched over from the PowerPC or Freescale chips, from the whole Motorola lineage of processors that was also used in the Amiga, by the way. Many other innovative workstations of the day sided on the Motorola camp. But they switched over to the Intel side because in those days, PC clones were eating Mac's lunch, a color, sound animated PC that played games like Doom in those days was so much cooler, faster, and cheaper than the equivalent Mac, Color Mac, whose only claim to fame was that it could run Quark Express and Photoshop and a handful of other graphic design premium things. So, Apple was fine to say, hey, it's the graphic design industry and it's the premium market. We don't need to port. But when Steve Jobs took the company back over, he brought with him a lot of the work he did from the Next company he started, Next OS and the Next Computer. And he didn't bring all that. He brought, I think, Next OS part of it, which became the basis for OS X. You see, there's a lot of dots being connected here. And Jobs had to go on these roundabout paths that took him away from Apple and back to Apple in order to do these miraculous-like transitions at Apple from such things as, Motorola lineage processors to switch to Intel lineage processors, from proprietary Mac OS lineage to more free and open source Unix. Darwin was their version, following the licensing agreements of Linux or Unix, whatever. They must have derived from FreeBSD or something like it. They contributed back their version to the free and open source community as Darwin. You could run Darwin as a version of Unix that's provided by Apple. And yeah, what else there? So, you know, all research leads you to the fact that Unix/Linux won. Everybody knows it but Microsoft, and now Microsoft is including everything it takes to run Linux as a side-by-side, and not even a real sub-operating system. Subsystems, there are subsystems, so it is a sub-operating system, but in that sense, Windows itself, the proprietary stuff, is also a sub-operating system. So you'll see some transitions occur over the years as Windows becomes more and more modular, with it really being some probably non-proprietary boot kernel underneath Linux. Windows is going to become Linux. And then the traditional windowing operating system will just be one of the various graphical shells, desktop, windowing systems that can superimpose itself on a predominantly Linux technology infrastructure. So, no one will even see it happening. No one will go, aha, see, Windows was never any good, because by that time, degree by degree, the frog will be cooked without knowing. So Apple has done it several times. No one holds it against Apple that things that they once held as religion, like the Motorola processor lineage, proprietary operating systems, are no longer the family jewels. What is the family jewels? It's the value adds. It's the integration job of all the components. It's the polish and the finished product. It's, all the helpers that start, you out on things, the wizards when you power things up for the first time. The list goes on. There's a lot of things that do the last minute shaping of of component products into a highly differentiated, premium commanding finished product. So one of the things that Apple did is they had to clean up Unix itself, because they needed better scheduling and task management and general operating system maintenance than cron and cron tables and cron jobs and its like could provide. Along with that is bash scripts. There was a whole init.d system, standardized mostly under Debian, I think, but I think Red Hat took it up as well, where all the commands to start and stop, anything you need running, needed a series of bash scripts, Unix scripts, .sh files that you would run with a sh program. So sh space file name .sh, or path to file name and all that. And you could have, ad hoc programs, scripts, very simple scripts under Unix. And these scripts under Unix and Linux were used to start and stop services and to do a lot of system management together with the cron system. Well, that was very difficult, and it's still what's the main thing under maybe Arch Linux has not supported what I'm about to talk about, Gentoo or Gentoo, what have you. They don't use it. Very stripped down. Of course, TinyCore doesn't use it. The very stripped down versions of Linux and Unix don't use this convention because it's bloated. It's one of these monolithic systems, which is traditionally what's not supposed to be used in Linux and Unix type environments. But the irony is that the Linux kernel itself is one of these monolithic systems. So what I'm talking about is System D really does fit into the Linux environment, landscape, terrain, because it's a monolithic system management tool sitting on top of a monolithic kernel. Opposite from what some of the founders of free and open source world, or they might just tell you, open source world, because free had to be added later as a qualifier, but Richard Stallman, RMS, would, excuse me while I get some hair out of my mouth. Richard Stallman would say that all software is free, intellectually free, but no one was really that radical in the mainstream developing free and open source movement. So they added the word free, so it's free as in libre, free as in, you know, liberty and justice and ownership of the intellectual property, as opposed to free as in beer, which is the trick proprietary manufacturers and, you know, product makers use. They give you the first dose free, and then you have to come back and keep paying, or the razor and razor blade business model. And so they wanted to make sure that the free and open source movement really evolved as exactly that, you know, free as in libre. So I think Richard Stallman finally ended up accepting this as this spiritual leader, the uncouth, you know, rough around the edges, spiritual leader of the free and open source movement. Because you had to call it something, but he's from the GNU Foundation, and GNU stands for, GNU is not Unix. So I feel like I'm just kind of rambling here, but it really does get to the heart of the thing here, that a unregulated, very almost Darwinian system kicked in, and it had virulence. It was virus-like in how it spread. Unix got copied in its actual form, the source of the SCO lawsuits that tied Unix intellectual property up in limbo for many years. There was the FreeBSD project that was copying that, but black boxing it. There was Linus Torvalds project that was black boxing it as well, which he said he wouldn't have done had he known that FreeBSD was in the works. But it tore down the ivory tower of Unix and more democratized Linux. It allowed a vibrant ecosystem to spring up around it. The whole, you know, competing distros. The ability for IBM to create the first $1 billion Linux company in the form of Red Hat without excess worry about intellectual property constraints, because the licensing was all worked out. And this is what won. You know, this is how you run your Python. So to me, the whole big hunt I went on got to the point that you use systemd generally, under Linux generally, to start your Python generally. And you write your code, ? Oh, I went through so many things over the years, but I settled on Vim. I will use VS Code, the web version. The Microsoft continues its constant shell game. So now everyone is jumping on the VS Code bandwagon. There's no one who's resisted it. Even me, even your PyCharm people, and, you know, people who have other religions of text editors will end up inevitably being bullied into VS Code, because Microsoft is at its finest in figuring out how to bully the developer community into using VS Code to create code that will be kept on GitHub, that will be shared when it's shared by GitHub Spaces, so that you're learning the VS Code user interface through embeds into web user interfaces that's back-ended by the cloud. And it's part of the battle now by the vendors over the cloud provided, cloud services. So there's a battle over your heart and soul to get you addicted to their cloud services. And the techniques are profoundly powerful. And they're coming mostly through VS Code from Microsoft and a few other places. Of course, Amazon has done it over the years with infrastructure as a service. There's some proprietary things built in, but it's not terrible, because at least there's Linux underneath. And you can make mappings between management software on the Amazon side with Bodo, and management software on OpenStack or some other virtual platform, Kubernetes, that, you know, will do many of the same things. So at least when you accept the fact that there's Linux servers underneath and you need to know a little about them, you've got portability of things you build. When you use a proprietary cloud vendor product, be it Firebase or Heroku's scalability, I mean, it's all over the place. It comes in many different forms. Then you don't have portability of your app. You can't take your marbles and go home or play with somebody else on some different marble field. You lose control of your own destiny, and that's exactly what the vendors are trying to do, to corral you and to lock you in and to, you know, make you a, you know, predictable, you know, forecastable part of their business plans. It doesn't have to be that way. Windows Subsystem for Linux gives you a path off if you're still a Windows person. So follow my Pied Piper lead while I play the music and show you how to use Microsoft's own embracing of the free and open source tools to make sure that you get the benefit and that are not in turn corralled into the Microsoft dev machinery, which you will be, you already are, I guarantee you. If you've researched this and kicked a few tires, you've got VS Code installed on your machine and you've started down that path. It will train you to have very, you know, product-specific muscle memory that you won't be able to rewire. You won't be able to get rid of. What you learn first is so important, especially if it's good enough and stays around for long enough. The problem is these things don't always stay around for long enough, and that's where this story, this chapter stops, this video stops, and I'll pick it up again later because I'm going to eat me some jalapeno chicken sandwich. Thanks for joining me. Hope to see you again real soon, and don't forget to subscribe.